Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. We got to talk about Monday Night Raw from October the 14th, 2024. Our second 2-hour Monday Night Raw, and praise God, it was only 2 hours. Oh my goodness, it felt longer than it really was. A lot of vignettes. I know this was taped last week, but this show was still so bad. It was bad, cuz. it was not good. But there were some good things on it. Clearly, there's almost always something worth talking about, something worth delving into, something worth discussing. Even if the show was bad, this show was pretty bad. It was actually kind of dumb too, but there's still things to discuss. Let's talk about Rhea Ripley first. So, she's not done. She's still after her title. And then here comes Tiffany Stratton, who has absolutely no business to be here, because she's passing a message from Nia Jax. She wants Rhea Ripley to stay out of her business. This leads us, unfortunately, into a brawl featuring Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez, who decided to jump Rhea Ripley and Tiffany Stratton while they were arguing. And Tiffany Stratton took one of the worst choke slams, probably of all time, and it seemed like she did not know she was supposed to take a choke slam. So Raquel grabs her and takes her up, and then she's going to take her down, but somehow Tiffany ended up on her face towards the mat. I have no idea how that managed to happen. It looked crazy. I don't know what that was supposed to be. Clearly they got fought off, and, you know, the main event was set later on. Rhea Ripley goes to Adam Pearce, says she wants to fight Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez. She needs a partner. Tiffany walks up. She's all indignant about something or other. Adam Pearce makes the match. Let's just shorten this thing up. Apparently, Raquel Rodriguez is also not known to Judgment Day. We're at this point now where Tiffany Stratton is now passing messages. She should be wearing a newsboy hat, and she should be wearing suspenders. If she's going to be passing a message, extra, extra, read all about it, then she needs to be dressed like one. You need to dress like a messenger, a newsboy. They had a tag team match, which I cannot believe Triple H had the unmitigated gall to have as our main event Tiffany Stratton and Rhea Ripley versus Raquel Rodriguez and Liv Morgan. So, of course, the match ends in disqualification. Nia Jax, of course, attacked Rhea Ripley during the match. Another brawl ensues with now all of these people are involved. And it ends with Nia Jax squashing Liv Morgan with the Annihilator and then demanding that Tiffany Stratton cash in the Money in the Bank. But Dominic Mysterio yanked Liv out of the ring before Tiffany could actually cash in the Money in the Bank. This was not good. The match itself was, I guess, fine. I mean, Liv almost lost the match like 3-4 different times, but okay, she's a weak chicken shit champion. I mean, it is what it is. I don't think we needed this to be the main event. If it had been the first match, maybe it would have been okay. But ending the show with Nia Jax, come on. What a joke that is. This Rhea Ripley, Liv Morgan thing is growing legs. I'm starting to see the huge problem with this crown jewel thing is because there's other things that they want to do. But that crown jewel gimmick that they booked themselves into is in the way. Look, it doesn't matter whether you like that event or not. Booking a stupid crown jewel championship wastes everybody's time. For a while, I was against the idea that thinking that these Arabian princes or whatever had any sort of creative control over these events. I mean, how could they know what these events should be? They can make requests, but what the hell else can they do? But this feels like something that would have only come up from a mark. How about a special crown jewel championship? Because I don't see Triple H coming up with this on his own. Look, this is incredibly distracting in terms of the stories that he wants to tell. I don't think he wants Nia Jax and Tiffany Stratton on Monday Night Raw with Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley. Especially now, since they've gone through all the trouble of introducing Liv Morgan's bodyguard, only for the bodyguard to be completely and totally ineffective, and Liv Morgan still manages to get squashed by Nia Jax. How ineffective. You already proven this is so bad. It's exactly the same thing they're doing in AEW with Camille. They're making her look ineffective far too soon. The point of the bodyguard is for the bodyguard to look strong, at least at first. Raquel should be flattening people. She should not be in these tag team matches struggling 50-50 with folks. She should not be in a tag team match at all, if we're being honest. I know that Raquel she's been on the roster for a while, but she should be dominant. That way, when she is fighting somebody like Rhea Ripley, and she is being bumped around and knocked around, it's more impressive. She's supposed to be protecting Liv. How does Liv get squashed when Raquel is already there? It's dumb. You have defeated the purpose of Raquel even being there. And then, of course, also the question of where the hell was Dominic the whole time before she got crushed anyway? Why didn't Dominic snatch her away before she got sat on? I don't know. I mean, there's just 100 different questions that we got to ask. And Liv Morgan is literally like 92 pounds. Nia Jax sat on her. That should be basically a hospitalization angle. Remember when Yokozuna sat on like Hacksaw Jim Duggan? Hacksaw Jim Duggan was a good solid 280, 300 pounds. And Yokozuna was like, 450, almost 500. And they did pretty much a goddamn stretcher angle. This should be them wrapping Liv Morgan in a body bag after she gets sat on by Nia Jax. Whoever wrote this and put this together did not think it through. And maybe I'm overthinking it because I hate it so much. But this was garbage, and then it was the main event. You're begging people to change the channel. So you're telling them that the main event, I know that the main event is technically Rhea Ripley, but come on, no. What would have been a worthy main event, however, Damage Control, Io Sky and Kairi Sane versus Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill for the women's tag team titles. He had a decent vignette before this match, and the match was great. Io and Bianca work very well together. Io and Kairi work pretty well together too, and Jade was there. She's learning on the job still. The alley-oop elbow drop by Io and Kairi Sane was great. That was great. So Lash Legend and Jakara Jackson, who lost on SmackDown, they were at ringside for this match. They started jaw-jacking with Damage Control, and then Lash Legend sucker punched Io. This leads to a vertical suplex from Bianca Belair being converted into the KOD, and Bianca Belair pins Io Sky to win the match. So they're basically setting up Io and Kairi going to NXT, whether it's tomorrow, which for you will be today, or it will be the next week. So I could see, they're going to get their win back. But Jakara and Lash Legend being involved in this is good. I mean, these girls have been in NXT for a little while now. I don't think that they're ready to be on the main roster yet. But since they're not doing anything on NXT, just sprinkling them on Raw and SmackDown is not too bad. Giving them the experience, giving them the exposure, this is good. And bringing Io and Kairi to NXT could be great too. Both women's champions. They're not doing much else on Raw anyway, so, giving them a little bit of time in NXT should be fun. So, that at least was pretty damn good. Next, we got Finn Balor, who wants a rematch against Damian Priest. He ain't going to get it for some reason. And then we are told there's going to be a tournament for the number one contenders for the tag team championships. But we're not given a bracket. We're not told how many teams are in the tournament. We're not told what teams are in the tournament. It's just, hey, there's going to be a tournament. And they're like, we don't care. And I'm like, I agree with you. I also do not care. So the first tournament match was actually Alpha Academy. Why are they still going by the name Alpha Academy? I have no earthly idea. It's just so lazy. Otis and Akira Tozawa versus the War Raiders. You probably heard a bunch of people squeal because they're no longer called the Viking Raiders. They also apparently got rid of the Viking gimmick totally. And now they just look like generic indie wrestlers. I mean, they just look like two guys straight out of GCW. You know, there's a bar here in Detroit called the Old Miami. They look like the kind of guys who would hang out around there. They just look like two guys, you know, two plain. I'm not saying they should be Vikings. I'm actually okay with them growing out of being Vikings. But they now come across as guys with no gimmick, you know. So I would rather they be Vikings because at least it's recognizable and it's unique than them to be gimmickless and just be generic, I guess, somewhat athletic, very generic looking dudes. Like if you saw these two guys and then like Brody King, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. You think they all just hung out together. It's almost like the DOA from you remember the DOA? You know, it was Chains, 8-Ball, what was the other one? Skull. You know, that's what it feels like. That's what this feels like. It feels like they're the disciples of Apocalypse. Anyway, of course they won. They botched a bunch of moves, but of course they won. I'm glad that Ivar is back at least. He was pretty solid. He seemed to slim down a little bit too, so he takes it seriously. I know everybody didn't like the Viking Raiders, even though they wanted to be Vikings on their own, and they were Vikings on their own time. Like literally, I think they had like one of them had a Viking wedding with that. What was the barefoot girl name? Never mind. But anyway, they're like, you know, dealing with Viking shit on their own, but now they're generic black jacket wrestling guys. Okie dokie. That's fine. Now this tournament idea is the shits, clearly. Because there are no stories. So I'm going to just guess, I'm going to assume that the Viking Raiders are going to win the tournament and then ultimately win the titles, which will lead to a really long run with the belts that nobody will give a shit about because there are no feuds. Now, if you were going to have feuds, you just do that now. I mean, there's nothing stopping you from putting together feuds right now. And plus, and this I'm doubling back on the Viking Raiders. I'm sorry, the War Raiders. I'm sorry. But then I forgot about the AOP. Also, you know, generic black jacket guys. Just like Finn Balor and, well, the Irish generic black jacket guys. I don't know, man. It's this is weird. American Made, they did a photo shoot recently. I'm talking about Chad Gable and his crew. And they all look like American Gladiators. It ruled. They had a really great vignette on this show talking about how they're the definition of greatness and all the other wrestlers are entitled and they're sick of these entitled degenerates and that they're going to be the heroes that this company needs. I love the Creed brothers. You know, the Creed brothers are very good. They've struggled on the main roster like everybody has because Triple H doesn't know how to book. Even when you don't have a lot of talent to book, you know, like there aren't that many tag teams. You could have just made the Creed brothers look very strong, except no, you 50-50 booking them to death, or you don't book them at all and they're just sitting around doing nothing, or they're just doing jobs. So it's unfortunate. But the Creed brothers, Bron Breakker, Carmelo Hayes, Tiffany Stratton, look at how he's booking all the new talent. I mean, let's just get real here. In any event, I like this promo. I thought the vignette was fun. Clearly, they're going to be some of the favorites to go into this tournament. But I think the whole idea is to put over the War Raiders. They clearly are going to be the guys that will win the tournament. Let's see. You got Bronson Reed had to sit down with Adam Pearce, where Adam Pearce is reluctant to make this match between Bronson Reed and Seth Rollins. I mean, there's just no good reason why you wouldn't do that. Like, Adam Pearce did not suggest in any of these conversations that he had that booking this match would somehow harm Monday Night Raw. There's just no good reason for it. Bronson Reed made the claim that he's there for the spotlight. He's there to be in the main event. This is his chance. He wants to fight Seth freaking Rollins. Rollins, despite not being healthy all year, wants to stay sharp, knows that guys like Bronson Reed are always going to be out to take advantage, to take their shot, and to test him. And he wants to rise to that occasion. He wants the match. And Adam Pearce still did not make the match because apparently he's too busy booking R-Truth versus The Miz. Like, you know, about the point of you having this job was to book matches people wanted to see. I'm not even there yet, but that's apparently something that he wanted to do. He couldn't wait to book R-Truth versus The Miz. But when it comes to Bronson Reed versus Seth Rollins, he has to be convinced. You know, I know that Bronson Reed is a meatball with arms and legs, but come on, man. You gotta do it. I mean, he crushed this guy like 8 tsunami splashes. You gotta make the match. All right, so Bron Breakker has an absolutely tremendous vignette. Talks about Jey Uso winning the lottery and beating him for the title. He's the luckiest man on earth. Said that he came out there, shook his head, and respected him. But Jey didn't say that he respected Bron. And he says that he's been doing this on his own. He doesn't need the family. He doesn't need the family name. And then when he surpasses his uncle and his father, they're going to respect him as he respects them. Meanwhile, Jey Uso has been sucking off of his family for 14 years. Just hard pause when it comes to that one. And said that his family can't save him from Bron Breakker. I thought this was a tremendous promo. I would have liked for them to have done this promo before. Or at the very least, show Jey being outwardly being disrespectful to Bron Breakker. Like when they did and what did he do? And what did he do? I'm like, yeah, what did he do? And then it shows that he didn't do anything. he didn't refuse to shake Bron Breakker's hand or something. It was all in Bron Breakker's head, which I guess is fine because he's a heel. So he can be kind of paranoid and dumb. But I liked that they're setting up the dichotomy between Bron and Jey, relationships with their families and all that kind of stuff. They've been doing that for a while, so that was fine. Then they had Bron Breakker versus Kofi Kingston. Now, I'm going to say something that's going to be controversial for some people. The idea that Kofi Kingston just goes out there and loses to Bron Breakker, I'm just not a fan of that. Now, I know Kofi is a mid-card act. I know that Kofi is, an older guy. I'm 100% in favor of Bron Breakker winning the match. But it should be harder to be a guy. This guy is a former world champion. I never understand how guys go from being world champions to being jabronis. It doesn't make sense to me. Bron Breakker needs the test. If you're going to increase his competition, him going from job guys to sort of middling mid-card guys to now like upper main event level guys, it should be harder and harder to win. This match was a relatively short match where he was dominant and Kofi really didn't pose even much of a threat and he beat him. And I was like, wow, okay. Great for Bron, but that sucks for Kofi. Like shit. Like part of what helps guys get over is facing some resistance, so whatever. Anyway, Xavier Woods and Jey Uso both came out there to help Kofi Kingston after Bron Breakker beat him up and was going to beat him up again after the match. There's still some schism between Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods because Kofi ain't running the plays that Xavier sets. He's supposed to be the quarterback of the team. Well, how is he the quarterback and he's an idiot? He's a moron. So, anyway. They had a Dragon Lee vignette, which is fun. Talk about how setbacks made him stronger, wiser, better. And now his heroes see him as an equal. And that the sky isn't even a limit for him, which I thought was great. He's going to be teaming with Rey Mysterio in this tag team tournament, which is not great. He should be a singles act. I get that you're trying to give him the rub, but that was the point of him being in the LWO in the first place. He should have been getting the rub. You know, if you actually told stories, this thing would not continue. It's already been 9 months. It's been 9 months of this. They called this guy up for NXT for no reason. Send him back. Please just send him back. I will say this. I think that the promo was very heavily edited because it made his English sound a lot better than I know it is. It was very clear, you know. So, but something tells me they probably put it together through the magic of editing to make him sound very, very good. But he sounded great in English. So, kind of generic, but then again, they haven't done anything with him to define who he is. So, it'll be a while. El Campeon, Damian Priest, El Jefe, no longer Judgment Day. He wants to be the world champion again, but yeah, that's that. Moving on. R-Truth beat The Miz. At least it was short. Karrion Kross then sicked the final testament onto R-Truth so that The Miz could give him a skull crushing finale. I don't know why this is occurring, but clearly Karrion Kross and The Miz are teaming up for the sole purpose of Miz having a team when the Wyatts attack him, so that Kross and all these guys could have his back, because otherwise it'll just be Bo Dallas and The Miz, which I don't think anybody found that appetizing. I'm pretty sure some people are not improved when you add AOP and Karrion Kross to the mix, but at least I like Karrion Kross. I mean, they don't do shit with him. He's always there lingering in the background when this guy could be, you know, one of your top main event dudes, but they don't see that. I don't know what's going on with that. He's just stuck here in this space doing nothing, you know, unfortunate. All right, Cody came to the ring. He talked. He was in the ring for a long time. Didn't really have much to say. And then Gunther came out there. He says that Cody is the reason why they're in a boom period. To call Cody the quarterback of this company. He said he respects Cody. The crowd then very cringely starts chanting, "Thank you, Cody." I'm like, ugh. Then he says that Cody tries to be everybody's darling, but when you're everybody's friend, you're nobody's friend. Cody said that's his greatest strength. He says that Gunther has gets really uncomfortable when he throws everything at you and you keep fighting. He says you break. And he says that he respects Gunther as well, but Gunther has only been getting his feet wet. He ain't really playing in the deep end of the pool. Gunther then called him a secondary champion, in which Cody Rhodes says he beat the most dominant champion in WWE history, and he's already slayed a beast. And then the two of them shook hands. That was the second Brock Lesnar nod on the show, because Seth Rollins mentioned slaying beasts earlier in the night, saying that he slayed a beast once and talking about Bronson Reed. And then Cody Rhodes started talking about slaying beasts in relation to Gunther. So they're starting to allude to Brock being there. But this show needs Brock so bad. They didn't have no idea how badly they need Brock Lesnar. Just play the theme song. That probably would be enough for most people. I know. He was involved with a sex trafficking lawsuit. Fuck off. Jimmy Uso. Now this is interesting. Because this clearly was not spoiled ahead of time. So Jey Uso finds Jimmy in his locker room. He immediately turned his back to him and left. Later on, Jimmy is looking into various rooms and he finally finds Jey. And Jey says, look, he don't want to hear this. He ain't teaming up with Jimmy no more. No more. He already said no. And that was that. So at least they tried. You know, Jimmy is trying to get the band back together and Jey is not interested. So now we have to get to how is Jimmy going to romance Jey into coming back to the fold? Is it going to be through Sami Zayn? Because clearly this episode of Raw was taped last week, and the vignettes and all that kind of stuff is just added to pad it out, because this is not stuff that the crowd saw in the building, more than likely. But next week is going to be a live crowd. And is it when Sami Zayn returns, which should be next week, are they going to have Jimmy Uso get in the ring with Sami Zayn and then try to talk Sami Zayn into coming back? And then it's going to be the two of them to work on Jey to get him to come back in. I think that would be an interesting situation. Or are you going to do the highly unlikely, and that is have Roman come back to get Jey himself, where Roman breaks down, comes to Jey, hat in hand, humble, and says, "We need you. We want you to come back." That could be a very emotional moment. I know everybody's talking about how emotional it's going to be when the Usos get back together, and I 100% agree with that. But the bigger rift is between Jey and Roman. I mean, that's a pretty big gulf there that they have to overcome. So it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to fix that, how they're going to patch that up. And I'm glad that it's not easy, you know. Clearly, because this was a taped show, they didn't really get into it. But there needs to be an in-ring segment. And it should be an emotional one. And I'm saying that Jimmy needs to be contrite. He needs to basically offer up a way of making amends. He needs to bare his soul. It needs to be some things that said that even if Jey don't respond, these are important things that need to be heard. And you don't need to have an explanation or a response immediately. But there needs to be a heart-to-heart had. I would think it would be interesting if they would try to do that through Sami Zayn. And then trying to have Sami Zayn bring Jey back in. That could also be interesting. But they're just now starting the redemption arc for Jimmy Uso. So there's going to be some work that needs to be done here. Apparently Vince Russo and a lot of other people are not feeling the Bloodline story. They think it's going on for too long. But what does Vince Russo really know about ending a story? He's never ended a story that he's put together at all, ever. Usually he gets taken off of creative or he drops it at some point. I mean, what was a story that Vince Russo actually worked from beginning to end? So I don't think he knows anything about ending the story. But furthermore, the Bloodline angle remains the biggest drawn angle in the company. And this is 4 years in. Unfortunately, for those of you who are detractors of the Bloodline story, this thing is going to be going on for a while. You know, it's nowhere near over. Now we're doing redemption arcs, you know, for Roman, for Jimmy, for Paul. You know, these guys have to go through the fire of being made whole again. They were dastardly, evil bastards. And now they're trying not to be that. Because now they are being faced with what they used to be. Which is represented by Solo and the Tongans. They are the Bloodline as it was 2 years ago. You know, vicious, violent, and, less successful, substantially less successful. But when you tell a whole story, the redemption arc is part of it, especially when you're telling a villain's story, which is what this is. The Bloodline started out as villains. Roman started out as a villain. Let's start there. And he's the main character. So he has his run of villainy where he does terrible things to people. And then he has to have his redemption arc. And that's where we're just now getting to. Now, is that going to involve The Rock and Hikuleo and all these other people? Probably. And I think that if you are on the fence about it, take heart in the fact that it doesn't involve the title anymore. So you don't have to care about that. But they're all going to get the main event spots. They're going to get the most time because they're still moving the most merchandise, selling the most tickets. I know that it aggravated a lot of people that they were the main event of Bad Blood, but it makes perfect sense when you consider not only that The Rock is still involved with this angle, but that this is the top angle in the business right now. 4 years in, it's still the Bloodline. I get it. And at this point, I'm interested in how it's going to end. So I do want to know, how are they going to end this thing? Are they going to stick the landing? So now we're trying to get to the redemption part of Jimmy. How is Jimmy going to romance Jey? And I'm interested in that. I want to see how they're going to do it. Because the only way I can think of is if Solo and all these guys decide they're going to attack Jey, and then Jimmy comes to his rescue. But why would they create more enemies when they don't need to? So. But Monday Night Raw is a very drab show. I mean, good Lord. I know this week was taped, so they got that as an excuse, even though I loathe to give them an excuse, but that was their excuse this week. It could be worse. It could be New Japan Pro Wrestling, where you have a human Q-tip by the name of Zack Sabre Jr. win your world title. Just a little word on that, because that's just, I can't stand Zack Sabre Jr. All it took for Zack Sabre Jr. to win the world title in New Japan was for everybody else who had talent to either break down or leave. That's what it took. And be mediocre and Caucasian. That's pretty much it. If you're mediocre and Caucasian, you got a chance in New Japan. But everybody else who has talent has to leave. When Kenny Omega wasn't good until AJ Styles left. And he probably wasn't going to get in until Finn Balor left. And I know Finn Balor wasn't even a main event world champion kind of guy, but he was the leader of the Bullet Club. And then when he left, they gave it to AJ. AJ just happens to be great. And then they said, okay, well, AJ is fantastic. Who's next? This guy, the ramen noodle head guy. He just happened to be pretty good too in Kenny Omega. Then Omega left. They was like, they went to scratching their head again. Okay, Will Ospreay, he's okay. And then once all of those guys left, and then Okada left, and now, what the fuck? Naito can barely move, and Okada can barely move, and everybody else is old. Okay, we'll just give the belt to Zack Sabre Jr., who is literally one of the most useless guys in the history of the business. I know a lot of people seem to like him. I don't. I've never liked him. And it's a sign of a company that's dead and grasping at straws when you're giving the title to people like Zack Sabre Jr. When WWE gets that down in the mud, you will be hearing this same rant from me. When somebody is willing to put the belt on a bum because you got nobody else, everybody either retired, beat to shit, or signed somewhere else, you're in really bad straits. New Japan is in real bad shape. Very bad shape. That's a rotten corpse over there in Nagawa and Tokyo, or wherever their headquarters is. Anyway, Okinawa. Moving on. So Raw sucked. New Japan apparently sucks too. And AEW sucks. So watch NXT. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later.
No one does it better.